Michael Denner here with Georgia Peter, and we're talking about Stetson, about Stetson's program in Russian, East European, Eurasian Studies, Russian language, our graduates, and all that. And Georgia graduated from Stetson University about 5 years ago, I guess, in 2015. With an undergraduate degree, and I don't remember. I know you were a SPREES major. Did you have a second major in poli-sci too?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So you worked with Gene Husky, and that's the root of all of this interest in that part of the world. Which you'll talk a little bit about. So Georgia, tell me a little bit about the 4 years you spent at Stetson University, the classes, the kinds of classes that you took, the faculty at Stetson University, what you did while you were here, and then. Like, I really don't know. I've sort of lost track of you over the years. How did you get from Stetson University to studying public policy? I got that wrong.
Public administration. It's the same thing. Public affairs. It's all the same.
Every university has its own name for it. And I always and you're studying public administration at my alma mater now at Indiana University. So I'd like you to last story, but let's start it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you came to Stetson, and why you chose Russian.
Well, I came to Stetson and started doing Russian because when I was about 13 or so, my mom became friends with this guy called Michael Denner.
Yeah, I've known you for a long time.
Yeah. And then so she told me that Michael Denner teaches Russian at Stetson, and I said,
I
"You
remember
can study Russian."
I met you.
Uh-huh.
You were playing like the French horn or something like that.
I did that for about 10 years.
Yeah, in your living room, and you were practicing. And I think I walked in with your mom, and I was like, "Hey, girl," and you were like, "Hey," and that was like the extent of our interaction. But like that was before you even came to Stetson University. I met you.
Yeah, it was. And then so once I learned that you taught Russian, I instantly decided that was what I was going to do.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with it? Be damned. Like, who knows? I just know that I'm going to go do that. And so I did. Came to Stetson, studied Russian the whole time, all 4 years. With the poli-sci classes, I took a lot of like Russian politics, Russian foreign policy, ethnicity and politics, a lot of those with Gene Husky. Pretty much if Husky taught it, I was super interested in it.
So what did you write your senior research on?
I wrote my senior research on identity in comparing Chechnya and Xinjiang, the identity shift from religious or ethnic to religious.
So fascinating. This had to do with ultimately questions of profession, of confession. You looked at ethnic identity and its overlap with religious practice. Is that right?
Sort of how people primarily identify themselves.
What did you find?
I've come to think about this question. Yeah, I've come to think about it a little bit differently in the intervening years, but kind of what I was exploring at the time was like there has been a shift in like primary identification from ethnic to religious. Ethnic being, as a result of like Korenizatsiya and things like that were the case there. China had a similar program as well, so that affected Uyghurs in a similar way. After the end of the Soviet Union, I saw more of a resurgence of religious identification, identifying more as a Muslim than ethnically.
So the Chechens are infamous. So you remember that. I'm old enough to like spent time in the Soviet Union. When it was still the Soviet Union. And even then, I remember people talking about Chechens as bad Muslims. Mm-hmm. Like they would drink and they would smoke and they never went to, they never prayed, and they didn't know the Quran. And in the 20 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think it's safe to say that all of a sudden, a bunch of Chechens found out that they were Muslims, and that changed Chechnya fundamentally. And it's such an interesting question. And you did that with the Uyghurs as well?
I did that with the Uyghurs as well.
Ooh.
If I'm honest about how my senior research actually turned out, I did much more thinking about the Uyghurs than I did about the Chechens.
That's okay. But that's how
Yeah.
that's research.
It was.
So,
It was a good project. I think I bit off a little
Uyghurs?
more than I could chew.
Who the hell are the Uyghurs?
Uyghurs, they are a Turkic Muslim people in the northwest of China, in the region of Xinjiang.
So that's the new province in China. It actually used to be part of Russia, or it's complicated. That border and that area was not populated at all, basically, except for the Uyghurs, before the 20th century. And then the 20th century saw that area marked with boundaries and then ethnic identity, and then eventually with what we would identify as cities or places where people lived. And of course, that's not particularly a Uyghur thing, because they were and still are largely nomadic, which is the problem that the Han Chinese have with them, right? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
It was the same problem that the Soviet Union had with,
you
know, all the nomads in Central Asia.
That's right. And
you're backwards because you're nomadic.
Yeah,
we must
they just
enlighten you and make you a modern citizen. And all
we'll
of
build you Bishkek.
Anyway,
the fascinating, like Dr. Fowler. This is, you know, she'll back me on this, and this is what Dr. Fowler does, and what you do. But like the question of identity and ethnicity and nationality and confession, those are questions that are sort of bared and made legible in the Soviet Union in a way that, like, you can't find anything else like it. It was a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-confessional place that at the same time tried to deny the importance of ethnicity, race, history, and religion. And so this weird, like, dichotomous, contradictory place that is the former Soviet space, the former Russian Empire, whatever you want to define it. And so you studied that. It's so interesting. Did you study abroad while you were here at Stetson University?
I did a few times.
Talk to me.
So I really couldn't wait to get my mitts on it. So I had to wait until after my freshman year. I think that's the Stetson's requirements. And I went to Germany because I did German in high school. So I just had to get that out of my system. And then after that,
did you go to where'd you go in Germany?
I went to Freiburg.
That's just call it France, and you're fine.
well, so we took a day trip to Colmar.
Yeah, Colmar's great.
Boy, that was a weird experience, you know, where it was like
museum there. It's got like one of the world's greatest one of the greatest art museums in Colmar. Such an interesting place.
All I really remember, to be honest with you, I think this was in 2012. All I really remember about Colmar was that we went and we had lunch there, and the waitress refused to speak English with us, but none of us spoke French. So she would take our order in German, but I was really the only one at the table who had proficient enough German to like order us all lunch.
How
very French and spiky and things like that.
How wonderfully Alsatian of her. So
absolutely.
You went to Germany.
I was in Germany.
France. And then
France, Germany. It was a workshop in getting drunk. I was 19, so
yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, came back, studied a little more, then did School of Russian and Asian Studies program, policy and conflict in post-Soviet space. So that was mostly, I by and large spent my time in Kiev in Ukraine with a hostess. And there were little sojourns. I started out in Moscow and then went to Kiev. But as I lived in Kiev, there were sojourns to Moldova and to Georgia, because a lot of it was talking about the frozen conflicts of the former Soviet Union.
Again, fascinating topic. And so I remember this. So you spent some time in Kiev, which is one of my favorite cities in the world.
Love Kiev.
Yeah, you have to. And you also spent time in Tbilisi, which is also one of my favorite places in the world.
Not enough time. I wish I had spent more time in Tbilisi.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about
Georgia.
Georgia. We'll have to talk about Georgia. So it's so damn confusing.
It was great for me at because they somehow, I don't know if like they were forewarned or if they had this knowledge in their head, but they all kind of knew that my name meant their country's name, and so it was always
They must have been so excited.
It was, I was
Georgia.
well, and I was the only woman in the group, so it was all just like, oh, let's lavish you.
And you mostly dealt with men because it's Georgia. But all right, let's.
Yeah, because it's Georgia. Anyways,
Georgia is its own place.
Yeah.
And its own person. Are those the two places that you studied abroad?
I also went to Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, I'd forgotten that you'd gone to Bishkek.
I went to Bishkek. I took a semester off. The fall of my senior year, because I was a little ahead on credits, so I just took it off and I went to Bishkek, and I studied Russian and I studied Uzbek.
I can't remember. I have to get back in touch with Paul. Did you know Paul? I
met Paul for the first time in Bishkek.
Yeah, because he graduated in like 2008. I got to get in touch with Paul. I love Paul. Paul was just like the best. What are your like? I've been to Bishkek. I like Bishkek. And did you study at Outsa?
Sorry.
Did you study at Outsa, the American University of Central Asia?
No, I studied at the London School.
Yeah, very good language. Very good language school.
They went out of their way to find me an Uzbek teacher.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I really liked London School.
Yeah, they're great. They're great people. Did you like Bishkek?
Yeah. I had a hard time with the jet lag. I had no idea.
Far.
So I knew that it was going to be hard.
Away.
Yeah. Well, so I knew that it was going to be hard. I did not realize how hard and like some of the ways that it was going to affect me. So, I had done Germany. That's just like your little taste right across the Atlantic of the jet lag. Then you do Ukraine is a little farther. That's much more, it's, this is really kind of gnarly. Bishkek knocked me flat. And I did not realize how much it interferes with your kind of perception of reality. Because I remember I called my mother. I FaceTimed her at, 2 a.m, sobbing down the phone. Like, I have made the biggest mistake. Why did I ever come here? Take me home.
Yeah.
Oh, big time. Yeah. And so she told me, she's like, well, you have to stay there a month. And if you still hate it in a month, I'll bring you back. But you got to just tough it out. And then after 2 weeks, I was like, I love it here.
Wisdom. So by the way, when I went to Bishkek, I went with Dr. Fowler and my son, Isaac. He was maybe 18 at the time, maybe 17. I don't remember.
How old is he now? Holy shit.
He's 20. He's turning 21 in August.
When did that happen?
Yeah, I know. You remember.
When did that happen? Yeah. I babysat your kids.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time. So they both fell so dreadfully ill, and like they were just like zombies. It didn't like it just. I just take a bunch of pills and I'm fine. That's like I medicate myself out of those situations. But they wouldn't, for whatever reason, do that, and they were just like they were basket cases. Like they just couldn't like 12 hours is a big deal. Like so just people who don't just to place you, like you fly to Istanbul, which is already a couple hours east of Europe, and then you get on a flight for 4 hours. Bishkek is way closer to Beijing than it is to Paris. Way closer. So anyway, the constant.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't eat for a couple of days. I had this really sweet Canadian roommate who went to the like the little grocery store and got me bread. It was in the shape of a flower. I just remember this because I was just picking off little petals because I could just barely eat. Yeah, it was a hard time. Dissociative depression. And these are things that I wish I had known. Yeah. Before going there. Not that it would have changed my mind, but that I would have been a little bit more prepared.
Maybe.
I think. Maybe. But at least armed with the knowledge.
But you think of like somebody like Dr. Fowler, who's an extremely experienced traveler, and she was just, man. So I just got to say, pharmaceuticals are your friend.
Well, we can talk about how to balance those. I haven't tried that.
Oh yeah. Like I totally regulate everything about my physiology with pills.
Better living through chemistry.
Yeah. For a couple days before and a couple days after, whenever I go someplace, and I never suffer from jet lag. I actually have really bad jet lag coming back here because I don't
Yeah.
medicate myself. But
Oh,
like
okay.
going there, I'm always just like,
Do you
give me a couple
remember?
hours of
You
sleep.
remember Mary Wright?
Yeah.
Yeah. She always said her trick was that when it was breakfast time, you ate breakfast.
Oh yeah.
Like,
You have to eat, and you have to eat
uh-huh.
even if you're not hungry.
And well, eat when you're not hungry, and also eat these foods that you associate with
Yeah,
breakfast
absolutely,
time.
absolutely.
So, and that helps you reset as well. Apparently, I didn't try that.
Yeah, your body is a conglomeration of habits, and you think it's not habit, but it's largely habit, and all you got to
Oh,
do
it
is
is.
to tell your body the right things and tell it right, like talk to your body like it's not you. It's hard. Anyway,
Yeah.
Georgia, we've gotten off topic, but that's okay. There is really no topic. So you did this. So you traveled abroad. You spent a lot of. I'd completely forgotten that you'd gone to Bishkek. That's so great. So
Yeah.
you went to all of these places that people have never even heard of. Did you go to Armenia?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Uh,
No.
but you went to Georgia, you went to Ukraine, you went to Russia, you went to France, and you went to Bishkek.
I
Um,
went to, well, so you missed a really interesting one. So I went to Moldova,
oh,
but we
Moldova,
also got to spend time in Transnistria.
which is like that is Fubar Center, like of the
So
world. So
everything is controlled by a monopoly called Sharif, or it was when I was there. So you see
still
Sharif plastered on everything. It's
yeah.
like the human trafficking black hole of the
So
world. Like,
do you want to visit the USSR? Do you want to go back in time 40 years? Go to Transnistria.
yep, it's very interesting.
It is but the Moldovans, I've never been to Moldova.
Uh-huh.
Everybody insists that the Moldovans are the kindest, happiest, sweetest people. I don't know if that's true.
They are. They're amazing. And the streets are paved with free Wi-Fi. But no, yeah, the best hospitality
Yeah.
I have ever encountered was I don't know where we were. We just kind of all piled into cars and drove out into the countryside to somewhere. And the guy who was driving us, I don't know, they were his family or they acted like family. I don't, but they took us into their home and fed us dinner and were like, here, have some wine, have some cognac. Here, let me carve a piece off of this honeycomb and you have that and just lavishing with us with stuff, and it really did not strike me as an area where there was a lot of extra income to go around,
No.
but they were piling it on us. So just incredibly warm, hospitable people.
As just a really quick aside, in 2011, I walked from Moscow to Tula,
I
and
forgot you did that.
yeah, and it's a complicated story, but on a couple of occasions, because one of our party got injured, we had to we would walk 30 miles towards Tula, and then we would actually, and it would take us 9 hours if you, and then we would hitchhike back to the place that we started to pick up our companion, and then drive to the next place. And it was complicated that why we had to do this, but it doesn't matter because
Yeah.
we were in the Dachnia Garada, and the places where all the dachas, the summer homes are between Moscow and Tula, and because of that, at that time, there was a lot of migrant workers from Moldova who could still come and work in Russia because of friendship agreements, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, the short of this goes that we kept on hitchhiking, and every time that we would hitchhike, the car would be full of Moldovans because there were always all Moldovans going back and forth between these construction sites and Moscow. And so those are the people who were on the road, and they were always so one, they were always going to a dance party. Two, apparently Moldovans dance more than most people, and they were always so young and happy and just so vibrant. And that's so my only interaction in my life with Moldovans was in tiny little like cars from the Soviet Union, and they all drove like maniacs. It's like they
Have you
run
ever met someone east of Budapest who drove like a normal, sane human?
like Ukrainians by and large are pretty good drivers.
Hmm, okay.
Yeah, they're okay.
But
They're
but
better
by
than
like,
Georgians.
former Soviet Union area standards, yeah,
Yeah,
sure. But like
yeah. But the
this is
Georgians,
not like United States driving.
yeah, the Georgians, the world's. I love Georgia. I love Georgians. Not you, Georgia. I do. I love you too, Georgia. But I love Georgia. I love
The joke
Georgians.
never gets old. Evergreen humor.
Yeah, the worst drivers in the world, and that is really saying something, because I've been to some places where people are really bad drivers, but it's okay.
So yeah, but I think my scariest taxi ride ever was in Bishkek. So I also, one time I was on a marshrutka. I will say I was on a marshrutka that got rear-ended. I got pretty decent whiplash, and then the driver of the marshrutka got out and had a fist fight with the other driver of the marshrutka, and then they both got in and then drove away. Like,
yeah, this and anybody who's spent any time in Russia, they'd be like, yeah, that happened to me too. It's like it's not even a surprise. It's like, yeah, that happened. Anyway, but
boilerplate study abroad experience.
Let's look on the bright side of things.
I thought that was fantastic.
It was great.
Pure entertainment value.
So when I was in Moscow in probably '93 or so, it was a really bad time. It was like the bottom. It was terrible. It was a really bad winter, and I would take the trolley. And so a trolley bus is different from those other ones, tramvai, because a trolleybus, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Anyway, the ones that I always used to take were connected with wires that ran above the street. And it was a really hard winter, and things were really screwed up in Russia. And so for some reason or another, the sparks were really bad, and they would light the oil that they used to grease the lever that went up to the wires. And so it was pretty frequent, like not every day, but every other day, that the top of your trolleybus would catch on fire from the oil dripping from the wires. And so the trolley bus, and this being Russia, like nobody even takes particular notice, and the trolley bus driver would get out, and it was always a woman, and they had what looked like a giant matchstick that had like bed sheets wrapped around the end of it, and she would get out and she would beat the top of the trolley bus until the fire went out, and then she'd get back in and off we would drive. And it was just like, so again, like things are a little different in Russia. Okay, like we've really gotten
most
off
things
topic.
In very small ways. Yeah, you were trying to ask me a question.
Yeah. So you graduated from Stetson, and then I don't really know if I know what happened. So fill us in.
Yeah, I graduated from Stetson. You did know this, but you forgot about it. I went to summer language workshop.
Swiesel.
Yeah. They don't call it Swiesel anymore, but I still call it Swiesel. Did advanced Russian. And then I came back to land until about December.
Who was your advanced Russian teacher, by the way?
Veronica Trotter.
I don't know.
Who now, I think she's Mark Trotter's wife. He's the head honcho there, but I think Veronica Trotter's in the Wells Library now, or something like that. I don't know if she's teaching Russian at the moment. But then so I finished up the summer language workshop, and I moved back to DeLand for about another 6 months until December or so, and I decided that I needed to get the fuck out of Dodge. So I moved to Seattle.
Oh yeah. Now I remember all.
Yeah. I moved to Seattle, and
putting all this together. Yeah, I remember all this. You had interesting jobs in Seattle, and spent some great time in Seattle, and got to know Seattle well.
I certainly did. I really love it there. Really, really love it. Yeah, I kind of just went there and beat around, and got a few jobs, paid rent, recuperated. I was pretty burned out after I finished up the degree program with Stetson, so I just needed to kick around, and I had never had a real job in the world, so that was very much like, forget book learning for a while. You need to remember, or not even remember, just learn how to be an adult in the world.
9 to 5.
Holds down a job and pays rent and all that kind of shit. So
that's great. So did I tell you to do that? Like, because that sounds like something like, but that's like all kids need to do that. I think like too many kids don't do that, and they need to take like 3 or 4 years off in their early 20s when the stakes are low, when you can make it on like $200 a week, and
that's
life
not a
thing.
Still,
and life is still bright and lively and interesting, and you need to like just hold down a job and live that way for a couple or 3 years, and that's great.
And make some really colossal mistakes, really big mistakes. Super important. Really, really gnarly. Super important. Wouldn't change a minute.
Yeah, you know, of course, mistakes are, so many people are so worried about making mistakes, but what they don't understand is that you learn so much, and those mistakes, they become like part of you in a way like scars do or something, and they shape you, and you are the sum of your mistakes. And people are totally wrong. They think, oh, the point in life is not to make mistakes, and but no,
That's not. That's how you learn. I hung up a sign over my desk that said failure is always an option. Not as any sort of cop out or anything like that, but more as like it just a realistic assessment of the way things might turn out, and understand that like that's how you really learn from things, is by failing, in my opinion.
Yeah, people talk about taking risks and about the importance of taking risks, but I'll point out that like an economist, any rational thinker realizes that risk means an increased chance of failure, but people talk about risk as though there is no failure. But like if you don't have failure, then you're not risking. And so yeah. So mistakes are so important.
On the Venn diagram of your comfort zone and the things that are worth doing, there is no overlapping space.
Yeah, you're preaching. I hear you.
Amen. We're in quarantine. Amen, I spent a lot of time in my own head.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Thinking about
when
these things.
When else are you going to do that?
Sorry?
When else would you do that?
I mean, really.
Anyway, I could say some really cynical things right now. Not about you, but about the way that people look at the world, and they're so worried about things. It's okay, right? Yeah. So you knocked around Seattle. Wonderful. That's great. And then?
And I realized that I could read books again. I could read long form again. And I started thinking about grad school, because that was always the sort of idea, is like, well, you kick around and you kind of figure out what the hell you're doing with yourself. Spoiler alert, still haven't really done that. But I decided that, I was starting to feel like it was grad school time. Like that was something I was really starting to get interested in. So I chose the public administration program, and I wanted to go back to Indiana University because I have done 2 of these language workshops, and I know they have an incredible international studies school program thing that's really, really well known. O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs is also ranked, I think, number 1.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was like, well, I mean, how can you really go wrong? And I applied and got it.
Yeah, Indiana, like many big schools, what people miss is like the top 10 or 15 big public universities, they do everything well. They do some stuff great, but I'm sure they do some stuff poorly, but like you can't really, like the reason to go to a big place like that is that they do so many different things so well that when you get there, the opportunities abound. Yeah. And so like very smart, good. Before we turned on the recording, you mentioned to me that you were doing some Islamic studies stuff there. I assume that that's an outgrowth of the Uyghur interest of Dr. Husky's class, of the time that you spent at Indiana and the time you spent in Bishkek. Talk to me a little bit about Islamic studies and studying all these crazy, weird languages.
So I got funded for FLAS, Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship. And so, thanks.
I had 4.
And then, so I applied to like a whole bunch of different centers. It comes from different centers at the university. You can apply to different places for different languages, for different reasons, all of that. Islamic Studies was who funded me. And they funded me for the first year. And they were like, yeah, so you applied to us, you asked to study Uyghur, and that's great, and you can totally do that. But we also noticed that you speak Russian. And if you want to use the class for Russian, you can also do that as well.
Cool.
I was looking for the April Fool's clause. I was like, really? Me? But that's what I did. It was a little hard to get the Russian studies and the Islamic studies to overlap in a satisfactory way, but I took some very interesting classes on Central Asia, because that is where the former Soviet Union and the Muslim world kind of overlap. And yeah,
and
so
Indiana has always been a center for Central Asian studies.
oh no, we have a lag.
Yeah, it's okay. We're back.
Okay, great.
Yeah. How's it going, Georgia?
Oh, good. I'm back. What were you asking?
Bill Furman isn't there any longer. Is he still there?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
I did just cite him in my final paper for for the Central Asia class.
Yeah, he was quite old. Well, he was a couple years ago, so it doesn't. I'm not surprised.
He retired when I was still at Stetson, if I remember.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. Did you, Georgia? I swear to God, I can't remember. You were at Dr. Husky's retirement party, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. That's wonderful. So you're now basically riding the Islamic studies pony towards a public administration degree. So talk to me about that a little bit, which is great. Like, that's good. Like, you gotta find the sources, right? And
they pay me a lot of money. It's really hard to say no. So
yeah,
I'm no longer pursuing like an area studies degree, but before I had made the decision on, am I really going to keep going with the degree I was initially going for was with Russian Eastern European Institute. And before I really decided if I was going to continue with that, I went and applied for FLAS funding again, got funded by Islamic Studies again, only for Uyghur. And I decided, well, I don't know so much if I'm really going to keep this RAI degree. I don't know how much it's really going to come in handy, and I really, really want to take Uyghur. So I'm going to take Uyghur for a year because they are giving me a lot of money to do it. And then I'm probably just finish up.
That's still sprees, like Russian, Eastern European, Eurasian studies. So you're
a little hazy on what fits into their acronym,
That's right. You're keeping the faith. That's awesome. Okay,
I love it. It's incredibly.
We're gonna wrap this up. It's been a great conversation. Where is Georgia Peters in 3 years?
Oh, hopefully not still in Bloomington.
What are you doing? Where are you?
Bloomington is a great place to live. I don't know if I'm really going to stick around here, but we'll see. I'm starting to go down this path of nonprofit management. So we'll see where that takes me.
That's cool. Go back to Seattle. It's a great city.
I would love to go back to Seattle. It is freakishly expensive, though.
Yeah. Maybe that'll change.
I kind of do, but we'll see. But that's kind of where we've been pointing ourselves.
You stay on the line, but I'm going to turn off the recorder, and then we'll finish up our conversation.